She moved through the hospital like she knew every corner by heart. Morning light came through the tall windows and fell on the linoleum floors. Nurses chatted softly at the nurses' station. The same security guard tipped his hat. Patients smiled when she walked in. She knew their names, their stories, and where to find the good coffee. Her cart held neat bandages, clean sheets, and a pen with a tiny chip of blue paint. She checked charts with calm hands. A child laughed in the hall. An old man slept with a newspaper on his chest. The rhythm of her day felt steady and sure. Break rooms smelled like stale soup and fresh coffee. On her way home, she would take a deep breath and feel ready to come back. This was the life she loved. Steady work, hands that healed, and faces that grew familiar. It felt safe, like a small, warm light at the end of each long day. At first, the change came in small, strange ways. A man with a cough arrived and then another with fever, both breathing harder than they should. Nurses whispered in the hall. The usual calm felt thin, like a sheet flapping in a new wind. Doctors asked questions that had no clear answers. Tests were sent away and results took too long. Signs went up on doors. Visitors were told to wait. Masks that had been for surgery only now appeared on every face. The nurse watched as more patients filled a wing that had been quiet the week before. Phones rang more and more. Schedules flipped. Nurses were called in at odd hours. The staff tried new routines, but tripped over unclear rules. Fear moved quietly at first, then louder with each new admission. She held her cart and felt the hospital change around her, steady paths closing and new, uncertain ways opening. The easy rhythm she knew began to wobble under the weight of something unknown. Rules changed by the hour. In the morning, the nurse wore a simple mask. By afternoon, she had a face shield and a new badge telling her where to go. Meetings announced new stairwells, new entrances, new ways to throw away gloves. Paper signs appeared on doors with words she barely had time to read. Each change promised safety, but brought more questions. Staff tried to keep up. Phones buzzed with updates. A quick training video played on a tablet, and then another rule arrived that made the video feel old. She found herself pausing at doors, unsure if she should enter. The fear was not loud. It was a knot in her stomach that tightened when the intercom called for more help. Still, she moved forward, doing what needed to be done, despite the tremble inside. Gloves, masks, and shields became part of her uniform like a second skin. She zipped a disposable gown and taped a mask to her face before entering a room, then added a clear shield that fogged when she breathed. Buttons and zippers were hidden under layers. Putting on gear took time. Taking it off took even more care. Each step had a rule. Wash hands, cover face, move slowly, toss items in the right bin. Alarms and signs reminded them to change rooms less and stay farther apart. She learned new words: PPE, isolation, don and doff, and said them like a chant. Routines shifted. Fewer hugs, more eye contact, and quiet words behind a mask. Patients looked smaller from behind plastic, but she still reached with gentle hands. Breaks became a careful ceremony. They peeled off gloves, washed, and sat far apart with silence between bites of food. The gear kept them safe, but it also felt like a wall. Still, she wore it every shift, steady and sure, to protect the people she loved to help. They came faster than the hospital could count. Rooms that were once quiet filled with new faces on stretchers. Hallways held beds with machines beeping. The triage area grew into a small maze of cords and tubes. Nurses moved from door to door, checking oxygen, starting IVs, and calling for help. Some patients arrived gasping, their skin pale and eyes wide with fear. Others were too weak to speak. The ventilators hummed and the monitors flashed numbers like a new language. The waiting room was empty of visitors, but phones buzzed as families asked for news. A tent outside became extra space when inside rooms ran out. She ran from patient to patient, tired but steady. Breaks vanished. New faces blurred into a long line of needs. The hospital felt full, not just with bodies, but with a heavy quiet that pressed on everyone. Still, each time she stepped into a room, she held the small hope that her hands could help another person breathe easier. Many patients were alone. Families could not come inside, so the nurse became a bridge. She sat by beds and held a gloved hand. She spoke slowly and told small truths. "You are safe," and "We are with you." Her voice was soft through the mask. She read messages from worried children and played a quiet song on her phone. She taped photos to a wall and smoothed a blanket like a parent. When a patient cried, she wiped tears with the back of a gloved hand. She learned names quickly and said them often so the people would feel known. She made phone calls to families and wrote short notes about how their loved one was doing. Sometimes she read a letter out loud. At night, she sat in a dim room and promised to be near. The work was simple and small, but it mattered. In rooms full of fear, her small acts of care became the warmth that kept a scared stranger from feeling alone. Death became a quiet, steady rhythm she did not want. One morning she would hold a hand and later that night make a call to say the person had gone. Names stacked up in her head like folded towels. Each goodbye felt like a small crack in her heart. She learned the careful steps. Check the monitor, call the doctor, close the curtains, cover the face. Then the soft voice to the family on the phone, the slow words that tried to hold steady. Sometimes she stayed after the shift to write a note or tuck a photo with the body. Sometimes she slipped outside and let the tears fall alone. The team moved through the work without grand speeches. They nodded, passed a quiet look, and kept going. Still, the nights were heavy. She dreamed of faces and wished for one more breath that did not come. Even so, she kept saying each name aloud when she could, so they would not be lost in the busy noise. Those goodbyes counted, and she counted them, learned from them, and carried them home. Each loss sat on her like a heavy coat she could not take off. Her hands, once steady and soft, grew rough from constant washing and long hours. She moved slower sometimes, not from age but from the weight of nights full of beeping machines and quiet goodbyes. Her heart felt tired in a way that sleep could not fix. She sometimes woke with a name on her lips and a small sob stuck in her throat. During the day she kept working, but her eyes felt like they carried the night. Small mistakes made her stomach flip. She would pause, breathe, and try again. At times she felt numb, as if the world had turned a soft gray around the edges. After shifts, she sat alone and counted the losses like stones, not wanting to forget any face. She washed her hands slowly like a small prayer, and hoped the tired in her heart would not dull her care. Still, she kept reaching out, soft hands, steady touch, because someone needed her that very moment. Shifts stretched like long roads with no end. She left home before sunrise and came back after the stars were out. Coffee went cold in the corner of her locker. Breaks were short. Just enough time to sit, breathe, and eat a quick sandwich between calls. Sometimes she closed her eyes for 10 slow breaths in a supply closet and called that resting. At night she tried to sleep, but her mind replayed beeping machines and faces. She woke to the sound of her own breath and counted the minutes until she had to be back. Once she slept in her car between shifts, curled under a coat with a seatbelt on, trying to keep her body still. Her family texted goodnight, and she wrote back with a tired heart. Coworkers covered for each other when someone could not go in, and they shared quick smiles that meant, "I see you." Even when she lay down, Rest seemed far away. Still, she rose the next morning and walked into the hospital to do it all again. She worried about her family every time she took off her mask. After long shifts, she moved like she did not want to carry anything else inside. At the hospital door, she changed shoes and left her work coat in the car. At home, she rinsed her uniform in the sink and put it straight in a plastic bag. She showered before hugging anyone, even when her child reached for her. Nights were quiet and careful. She slept in a separate room for a while, listening to the house and missing small sounds. Her partner left meals at the door. They wrote love notes and wiped handles together, like a secret plan to keep each other safe. Sometimes she felt guilty for the distance, and sometimes she felt fierce to protect them. She counted each careful step as a promise. The fear of bringing the virus home lived in her hands and choices. Still, she worked hard and held that worry close, because love made her careful and brave. She stood at the window and watched the sunrise, feeling pulled two ways. The hospital called her hands to help strangers who needed medicine and comfort. At the same time, her small kitchen held a lunchbox with her child's name and a drawing taped to the fridge. Love lived in both places, and she felt torn. Sometimes she wanted to stay home and tuck her child in, to hear the small breathing that meant everything. Other times, the hospital needed her steady touch, a calm voice, or a quick decision that could save a life. She made lists in her head, one for patients, one for family, and both grew long. Her partner nodded when she left, eyes full of worry and pride. She promised short calls and careful hugs when she could. Each promise weighed on her like a coin in a pocket. She carried both duties gently, trying to be enough for the people at work and the people at home, even when that felt impossible. One slow afternoon, a coworker opened a small, worn Bible and set it on the break table. The cover was soft from many hands. He did not shout or make a show. He turned the pages and found Psalm chapter 23. He read it low, like a secret told in the dark. She sat across from him, tired and still, and listened. The words were simple and sure. A shepherd, green pastures, still waters. They felt like deep breath after a long run. Other nurses paused outside the door, and the room grew quiet. The words reminded them of care and protection, not rules or machines. When he finished, no one clapped. They just nodded and held their coffee longer. The nurse felt something warm in her chest. The psalm did not fix everything, but it made the weight feel lighter for a moment. It gave a small promise of rest and a path forward. She tucked the moment into her pocket and went back to help the next person. She opened the small Bible with hands that trembled a little and read Psalm chapter 23 out loud. The words were plain and soft. "The Lord is my shepherd," she said, and imagined green pastures and quiet streams. The picture felt different from beeping machines and bright lights. It felt like a place to breathe. As she read, her shoulders loosened. The line about walking through the valley of the shadow of death made her think of the dark rooms she had seen. But the verse promised no fear, because someone walked with her. That thought steadied her feet. She put the lines into her pocket like a spare cloth. When a patient reached for her hand, she whispered a small part of the psalm. When she could not sleep, she repeated the verse until her heart calmed. The words did not change the work. They changed her inside. They gave her quiet courage to keep caring and to carry hope into another day. The words of the psalm began to sit in her like a small, steady light. In the middle of alarms and hurried footsteps, she remembered lines about a shepherd and green pastures. That picture did not fix machines or make patients well, but it made her chest feel less tight. When the next crisis came, she breathed the words quietly to herself. "He leads me beside still waters," she thought, and her hands moved with a little more calm. The promise of a gentle guide let her do hard work without falling apart. Fear still showed up, but it was a smaller sound beside the psalm. Co-workers noticed she seemed softer, kinder, like a steady hand in a storm. She shared a line or two with a frightened family on the phone. The words gave her a reason to stand and keep going. They felt like strength in her pocket, light enough to carry through a long shift and strong enough to hold her when the night felt too heavy. Before a shift, she would press her palms together for a quiet second and say a short prayer. The words were small and steady, like the psalm she had learned to hold in her pocket. In rooms full of machines, she prayed for breath and for calm. She asked for a gentle hand for each person she met. Her kindness showed in small things. She smoothed the blanket, warmed a cold cup of water, and tucked a photo near a pillow. She helped a man find his wedding ring in a tray and held a phone so a daughter could say goodnight. She hummed a soft song when a patient could not sleep. Each act felt like a promise, to be there, to care, to keep hope alive. Sometimes she prayed aloud with a patient who wanted the words. Other times she prayed silently as she washed her hands. Those small prayers and kind acts made the day softer. They gave her strength to keep going, one gentle choice at a time. In the middle of hard days, small smiles kept them moving. In the break room, they took 5 slow minutes to sit and breathe. Someone told a silly story about a patient who hit a rubber duck, and the room filled with quiet laughter. They shared cold sandwiches and warm coffee, and they traded quick jokes through masks. A coworker brought homemade cookies, and another left a tiny plant by the window. They taped funny drawings on the wall to make the room brighter. Even a short game of rock, paper, scissors made them forget beeping machines for one round. These moments were rest. They made tired hands feel steady again. When a nurse left the break room, she walked back to the ward with a softer face and stronger feet. The small joy they shared did not fix everything, but it gave them a reason to keep going, together, one shift at a time. She learned the shape of fear and let it sit like a small stone in her hand. Some days the stone felt heavy, and other days it felt light, but she did not throw it away. She named the fear, the unknown, the quiet beeps, the long goodbyes. Naming it made it less like a shadow and more like something she could carry. Each morning she chose one brave step. She tied her shoes, put on her mask, and walked into the ward. When her chest tightened, she took 3 slow breaths and kept going. She told herself, "I will do what I can," and that helped. Courage came in small pieces, a steady hand, a soft word to a patient, a quick smile to a coworker. She did not stop being afraid, but she did not let fear stop her either. At the end of each long day, she found she had more little pieces of courage than she had the morning before. That was enough to try again tomorrow. At the end of a long night, she sat on the floor by the window and folded her hands. The hospital was quiet now, lights low, machines a soft rhythm. She knelt or sometimes just sat with her knees up, and she let herself breathe without hurry. She thought of the psalm and of the shepherd who walked with her. The words felt like a warm blanket around a tired heart. She prayed slowly, not with big words, but with the same small promises she had kept all day. I will care, I will try, help me rest. Outside the window, the sky lightened, and a single bird called. She felt a small peace come down, not loud but steady. Her hands, rough from washing, were still. She trusted that strength would come again with the next shift. For a little while she let fear sit beside her and did not chase it away. When she stood up, her shoulders were softer. She walked back to the ward, ready to be kind again. The morning light moved slowly through the ward as she finished wiping her hands. Outside, a neighbor waved from the sidewalk, and a child in the next house rode a bike fast as a small bell rang. Inside the hospital, a new nurse asked a quick question, and she smiled and answered, sharing what she had learned. She put a fresh bandage on a wrist and straightened a pillow. A family member thanked her over the phone and sounded a little calmer. For a moment, the day felt ordinary. A sunbeam, a quiet laugh, a warm thank you. Those small moments built a steady path under her feet. She knew the hard days would come again, but she also knew she would rise. She had learned to breathe, to pray, and to hold hope like a small lantern in her coat. That hope kept her moving, gentle and brave, and Psalm chapter 23 gave her the quiet courage to keep walking forward.